Stocks are up. Look at that. Almost across the board, everything's looking good. Well, that's a good way to start the weekend if it works out that way. Let's see if it closes. If it closes on a high, we'll be happy. All right, we're almost ready here for the show of shows. The thing that will make you so happy. Are you ready for this? Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the highlight of human civilization. It's called Coffee with Scott Adams, and I'm pretty sure you've never had a better time. But if you'd like to take it up to levels that nobody can understand with their tiny, shiny human brains, all you need for that is a cup or mug or a glass, a tankard, chalice or stein, a canteen, jug or flask, a vessel of any kind. Fill it with your favorite liquid. I like coffee. And join me now for the unparalleled pleasure, the dopamine hit of the day, the thing that makes everything better, with a little oxytocin today, a little bit. It's called the simultaneous sip, but it happens now. Go. Extraordinary. The best ever, probably. Well, this might surprise you, but did you know, according to Psychology Today, the smelling coffee can increase your attention and memory? That's right. They did a little study where they just gave people the smell of coffee, and it gave them some of the mental benefits of actually drinking coffee. And then they made this mistake. They called it the placebo effect. No, that's not the placebo effect. That's hypnosis. Now, I'm just sort of recreationally playing with this. But the placebo effect, as I understand it, is if they give you a fake medication and you don't know it's fake, but because you expect it might work, there's something about your expectation that makes it work. Whereas I think what's happening with the coffee test is that because the real coffee gives you real mental benefits, that being triggered by the smell of coffee makes you remember and associate those mental benefits and puts you back into that state. That would be closer to hypnosis. So hypnosis is where you pair two things so that the quality of one thing kind of slops over into the other. The reason that beer companies used to do commercials with attractive, young people was people would like looking at the young people, and especially the women, and they'd feel good. And then when they saw that brand of beer, they'd transfer some of that good feeling into the beer. So I feel like the reason that the people smelling coffee performed better is because it triggered their past memory, not because it influenced their expectations of what would work. That's what I think. Anyway, here's some backward science, according to the University College of London. Did you know that adults who frequently post on social media are more at risk of developing mental health problems? So apparently it doesn't hurt you so much to consume social media. That's not highly correlated with mental problems. But if you post a lot and you also consume it, it's highly correlated with mental problems. So did this study show that the more you post, the more likely you'll have a mental problem? No, I think it's backward science. Backwards science. Let me explain what I mean. If you've ever had incredibly good sex with somebody you were in a long-term relationship with and you were in love with, and you remember how good that felt, while you were doing it, when you were right in the middle of it, did you ever feel like a pressing need to post something on social media? Or were you perfectly happy doing what you were doing at the moment? I'm going to say you were happy. You were happy. So could it be that rather than posting on social media gives you mental problems, could it be that if you're not happy with your life, you're looking for something outside of your life to give you a little thrill. I've got a feeling that being unhappy is what makes you post. I don't think that the posting is so much what makes you unhappy. But I think both are true. I think it's true both ways, but I think it's more about unhappy people are looking for something to fill the need. And if you were already happy, you probably wouldn't do a lot of posting, except maybe family pictures or something. According to The Hill, the Pentagon has finally admitted they don't know what's up with UFOs. So apparently, in the past, there have been a lot of denying and obfuscating. There's a word I read a lot, but I don't say out loud a lot. Obfuscating. Hey, Bob, you've been obfuscating. I never say that word. I only read it. Um, so apparently, during some briefing with the reporters, this new director of I guess there's a Pentagon department to look for these anomalous flying things, and said, said, quote, this is Kozlowski, that's the director. There are interesting cases that I, with my physics and engineering background and time in the intelligence community, I do not understand. And I don't know anybody else who understands them either. All right. I'm still at no for UFOs being aliens from other planets. I think I'm still at no for any kind of early human beings who are hidden below the ocean, who come out every now and then with their high tech to look at the uncivilized people. Probably not. Probably not. Not impossible. I mean, I like thinking about those things being possible recreationally, but no, I don't think so. I think that when somebody says, I can't explain it with my physics and engineering background, that all it means is I can't explain it with my engineering and physics background. So the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything. That's pretty far from saying aliens have visited the planet. I don't know why I'm seeing what I see. That's all you know. You don't know anything else. You only know that you don't know. So I don't think that got us closer to admitting there's some kind of other kind of life force here. Maybe. Well, according to The Independent, there's this new scientific breakthrough in China where they made camouflage material that will instantly change color to match your background, sort of like animals do, chameleons. So if you wear these clothes, you will just sort of disappear into the background. Now, since you don't wear clothes on your face, I'm kind of looking forward to this because wouldn't you love being like a floating head? Wouldn't you love to walk into a room and people go, ah, oh, damn it, are you wearing those camouflage clothing again? And I would say, yes, I'm obfuscating what I am. No, I wouldn't say that because I don't say obfuscating. But I feel like the opportunity to look like a floating head is irresistible. So I see big potential for this technology. Floating head. Also good for the office. If your boss is coming by, if you just sort of tuck into a ball, like if you have a hat or a face mask, just cover up. Yeah. Meanwhile, here's a story that is so good that I can't believe it's true. According to EV Central, Mercedes-Benz has developed a paint for the car that would be enough to charge your car for almost all normal business. In other words, Mercedes-Benz allegedly has developed a paint that would be as robust as the paint on your car is now, so it wouldn't be a bad kind of paint either, but that it can actually create enough electricity. The paint itself is designed to be like a solar panel, but just paint. And it's so efficient that you could drive, like 50 miles a day or something, basically your commute, without ever buying fuel. Now, do you believe that? Doesn't that sound a little bit too good? That your cars would basically never need fuel. All you have to do is paint it with this kind of paint. I don't know. It's not going to happen right away. They're saying 5 to 10 years, but I'm going to say probably not. If I had to place a bet, I would place a bet that you will not be able to completely power your car for normal business because of the paint. It sounds good, but I don't know. That's the sort of thing that never really happens. In other news, the University of Canterbury said they fed kids these little micronutrients, and it reduced their irritability, anger, and aggression. And it supposedly had a big difference in their improving their emotional and regulatory systems. Do you know how they could have saved a little bit of money on that? Yeah, they could have just asked me. I've told this story before, but it's one of my favorites of understanding human behavior. When I was in my first marriage, and there were two stepkids, and they were young, very young, and they would often get in arguments with each other because they were close in age, and they'd be fighting it out, verbally fighting it out, and and I would say, "Oh, we're gonna have to do something. What are we gonna do?" And my ex-wife would say, "Oh, they're just hungry," and I would think, "What do you mean they're just hungry?" Their behavior, is like aggressive, and they're yelling at each other. That's not hunger. There's something else going on. It can't be just hunger. And then she would put down a plate of food, like what lunch or whatever the meal was, and their moods would completely change. They would sit down and take 2 bites, and they'd be in a good mood. And I'd be like, "Is this really happening? Did you just cure somebody's, like, entire mental situation with a hot dog?" "Yes, yes." All they had to do was eat, and they were fine. And I watched that experiment repeated a number of times. Yeah, food. It makes people relaxed. But it's more to my point that your body is your brain. So if you don't take care of your body, you are not taking care of your mental health. Gotta take care of your body first. All right. Somebody says I post a lot. I do this for a living, right? It's different. It's different if you're doing it every day. Anyway, the House Intel panel, according to the New York Post, is thinking that it's increasingly likely that the mysterious Havana syndrome actually comes from some foreign actor. In other words, the stories of the mostly embassy people, American embassy people, having some kind of brain disruption that they thought was maybe some kind of a secret sonic Russian weapon. And then people looked into it and they couldn't find any evidence there was a weapon. But now there is further investigation. And according to subcommittee chairman Rick Crawford of Arkansas, quote, "I've discovered that there is reliable evidence to suggest that some anomalous health so they have a name for it now, anomalous health incidents, the AHIs, are the work of foreign adversaries." Now, I like Representative Rick Crawford. He's one of the good guys. But I don't think I quite believe that there's evidence of adversaries. I think the only thing there is evidence that people have complained. They have certain kind of jobs, and that when investigated, they have real damage. But the symptoms are all over the place. And when I see too many symptoms, I immediately think it's not a weapon. It's some psychological effect. Now, the damage could be real, but the psychology might be what's causing people to go have it looked at. And I suspect that this is a perceptual situation, but I could be wrong. So if I'm wrong on this one, if somebody someday, you know, a whistleblower says, "Yeah, here's the weapon. I did it myself. Watch, I'll do it on this animal. We'll test it." I could imagine someday I could be convinced this was real, but I would place a really large bet that it isn't at this point. I will say that if you attended a subcommittee in which people gave you lots of evidence which is like, oh, this person had this problem, and doctor says this problem. It's the documentary effect. So if you have a bunch of people coming in saying, it sure looks like a weapon to me, and nobody comes in to say, here's the evidence that it's not a weapon, it's going to feel like you really had a lot of evidence that an adversary did it. So I would say beware of the documentary effect if you have a subcommittee that's taking testimony that all kind of leads in one direction. All right. Meta, according to Breitbart News, Meta is going big on nuclear energy to fuel their AI. So what's he gonna do? So I guess all the big companies figure they got to have some kind of connection to the nuclear power industry. This is just the best thing. It turns out that the most important part of AI was to force countries like America to take nuclear power seriously for the first time. I feel like that might be the enduring legacy, like the most important part of AI is not even the AI, that it got us to completely revamp our whole understanding of our energy situation. Because as many people have pointed out, if you're making a lot of money from energy or you're doing your energy stuff right, your country does well. You win wars, your economy does well. It's all kind of comes from energy. Can you think of any country that produces a lot of energy and isn't better off for it? I mean, energy is kind of the whole game these days. So I think this is the biggest thing that's happening, actually. Well, according to ex-user Tara Bull, I saw this story, which is a funny name. First name is Tara, last name is Bull, but I think she does it humorously, like Tara Bull. I don't know. I don't think it's a real name, but it'd be funny if it were. Anyway, so Elon Musk company, the Boring Company, they've got these big boring machines that make tunnels easily. They got approved to do tunnels in Vegas, so they'll connect the Vegas airport to the downtown. And I got to tell you, I don't know if I could go into one of those tunnels. To me, that's scary as hell. I mean, it was hard enough to convince myself to use BART, the mass transit in the Bay Area that goes under the bay. It's kind of scary to be under the bay. Now, in reality, you're probably safer there than above ground, right? Because if you get deep enough down, even the earthquakes don't bother you. Basically, you're immune from just about everything on the surface. So you're probably safer in one of these tunnels than you are anywhere else on Earth. But man, the psychology of it, I don't know how long I can stay in a little tunnel that's feels like it's only about the size of the car. I don't know. You'd have to give me some kind of tranquilizer. According to Shyam Sankar on X, there are more data centers in the U.S. than in all other countries combined. Did you know that? And it's not even close. If you look at all the data centers in the U.S., it's like this gigantic bar, and all the other countries are just those little dots. How in the world can other countries ever compete with us in that scenario? Because it seems like ability to quickly build giganto data centers is what's going to drive AI, and that's what's going to drive robotics, and that's what's going to drive basically everything in the future. So if we have like I don't know, it looks like a 50-to-1 advantage or something over the next best country that's doing data centers, that feels like really big. So we'll see if that makes a difference. However, I want to be careful about this next point. I do not give financial investment advice. Now, having told you I do not give financial investment advice, I'm going to say something that sounds a whole lot like financial investment advice, but it's an observation. Trust me, you don't want to invest based on what I say. Honestly, you don't want to, because I'm mostly guessing. And when it comes to individual companies, that's a bigger guess than most things. So here's my feeling. Personally, I sold my NVIDIA stock, which had already gone up quite a bit. Now, the reason I got rid of it is not because I think it's necessarily gonna go to 0 tomorrow, but because I think it's so vulnerable to disruption. Because the cost of building one of these NVIDIA-driven data centers is just, billions of dollars, and it just seemed to me that somebody's gonna figure out a way to do that way more cheaply. Like, somebody's gonna find a way to compress AI into some more efficient form, and then the entire business model, might be destroyed. So, AI has this weird quality where on one hand, it's the future and it's everything. So if you invest in the biggest company that's doing the most important thing for the most dynamic thing, you're probably in good shape, right? Which is why I bought NVIDIA stock in the first place, is that it was almost like well, not almost, it was a monopoly. So one of the best pieces of investment advice I ever got was from somebody famous who I'm not going to tell you. It's somebody who's in the news quite a bit, actually, but once told me privately that he only invested in monopolies. It's just that they don't look like it. Like Facebook is sort of a monopoly. Uber is close to being a monopoly, at least for a while. Um, so I thought Nvidia looked like one of those. It's why I also used to have stock in Apple, which, by the way, if you'd taken my advice and sold it when I did, you would have lost a lot of money because it kept going up. But both Apple and AI have the weird quality that things could change quickly. And I don't like to be in an investment where something could change completely, like on a dime. For example, um, you think the iPhone is unbeatable, and then next thing you know, Elon Musk says that Starlink will be able to provide phone service. Now, that's just the background phone service, not the device. But how far away are we from AI becoming the interface for a generic phone that somebody like Elon Musk could manufacture and just replace the entire smartphone industry with some kind of AI phone that works on satellites? I feel like that could happen kind of quickly. So there's some new news on the large language models. Apparently, somebody did in fact come up with a new algorithm dubbed calibration aware low precision decomposition. Okay, doesn't matter what it's called. But somebody found a way to massively change the size of the computing and increase the efficiency to the point where it's sort of knocking on the door of making NVIDIA, I won't say obsolete, but you wouldn't need as much of it. And while I don't think you could bet on any one breakthrough, I'm not saying this will change NVIDIA's fate. I just feel like the whole AI thing is just begging for some kind of massive disruption where somebody says, instead of this $10 billion data center, watch, I put it on your phone. That's basically what these guys did. It's a little less good than if it ran through the data center, and it uses too much electricity on your phone, so it would drain your phone. But if those are the only problems, it's a little less efficient and it uses a little more electricity on your phone. To me, that sounds kind of dangerous to the people who sell billion-dollar data centers. But again, I don't think this breakthrough is going to change everything. But I feel like there's going to be some massive, massive AI-related technological breakthrough that makes the data centers less important. That's my prediction. The FBI says that if you text between an iPhone and an Android, it's not secure, meaning that it's not encrypted. And so they're saying maybe you should use WhatsApp and Signal. I'm here to tell you again, as a public service, if you send a message in any way to another human being, you don't have a secure anything. It doesn't matter if it was secure when it went across the network. It ended up with a human being. Human beings can't be trusted. Are you kidding me? No, there's no such thing as a secure message. Yeah, you know, trust me on this. If there's one thing you can be sure of, you can't trust the person on the other side of the message. It's that's a guarantee. So no, just treat everything like it's public, and you'll be better off. Surprisingly, the jobs report was revised to make it better in September. Hmm. Usually, that close to the election, I would have thought it would go the other way. But um, revised up the number of jobs that were created, and unemployment set 4.2, which is a little high, but it's not crazy high. So that's looking pretty good. All right, we got to talk about this United Healthcare CEO stuff. Um, on one hand, I usually don't like to talk about individual crimes, so I usually don't talk about the murder or the one migrant who did some terrible things, no matter how bad they are, because they seem anecdotal, and you get too hypnotized by the anecdote, and then you think it means something larger than it does. Sometimes it does, but you could be fooled by that. So, but this healthcare CEO murder really is touching a lot of third rail. No, what would I say? Touching a lot of triggers because people have so many issues with healthcare and with insurance, especially. So, here are some things that are reported. Number one, that the shell casings had somehow um, carved into them. What do you call it when you carve something into metal? Uh, what's the name for that? Anyway, etched in, sort of etched in. And then it said something about um, delay, deny, and defend, which is the name of a book, which is about how healthcare insurance companies deny claims to make money. And so the thinking is, oh, this was a sort of a political statement, something about the company and the way it did business. But I don't think it's confirmed that those shell casings have anything engraved. Thank you. Engraved is the word I was looking for. Um, I don't think that's confirmed, is it? I feel like there was one source that said it, and then it got repeated. I'm going to wait on that one. If I had to bet, I would place a small bet that the shell casings don't have that on them, and that's just fake news. Does anybody have the same feeling? I wouldn't place a big bet on it, but I'd place I'd bet $100. If somebody wanted to bet me, I'd bet $100 that there's nothing on the shell casings, because it's exactly, yeah, it's too on the nose, but it's possible. Now, if there is something on the shell casing, does that mean that it was a political event? No, because the one thing we know about the shooter is there was a lot of preparation. If there was a lot of preparation, it also opens up the possibility that part of his escape plan was to make you think it was done for a different reason. So if he had done it for personal reasons and he wanted to make you look for, people who had political reasons, so it would, the attention would be diverted, well, maybe that would be exactly how you do it. Maybe you'd put something on a shell casing so they think, we got him now, it's political. But I feel like if it were political, you wouldn't you wouldn't do it that way, would you? Wouldn't you just, type out a message and drop it there or something? It doesn't feel right to me. The other thing I learned from this is that you can't trust gun experts. Uh, Did you have the same experience I did, which is, oh, finally, here's a gun expert who's going to explain what we just saw, and I go, okay, oh, got gun expert, and then the very next gun expert says the opposite, and then the very next gun expert is like a third story. I feel like some of the gun experts are probably right, but I can't tell which ones because I'm not a gun expert. So I feel like the gun experts are just one more example of you can't believe experts about anything. But I'll tell you the things that sound more believable than others. Here's what I observed. I believe that he was experienced at using that weapon because he kind of quickly cleared it or reloaded it or recocked it or whatever he had to do. He seemed to know that whatever the problem was immediately fixable. So that would suggest that he had he had experience with the weapon. I would disagree with anyone who says he's a professional hitman who has ever done this kind of work before, because as one of the gun experts said, if your job is just to be a professional hitman, you would walk up to him, you'd put one bullet in his head, and then you'd drop the weapon. I don't know if that still makes sense in today's ability to find DNA on anything, but you probably would have done a headshot, and then you would have left right away. Maybe left the weapon there if it was untraceable and you didn't have any fingerprints on it. But to me, he didn't look like a professional. He looked like somebody who was prepared, but not a professional. One of the shots apparently hit the CEO in the calf, and I just don't see that being a professional job. Like I don't know how that happens. Some people saying that the the reason the gun appeared jammed or had to be, a reset was that there was some kind of crappy silencer on it, and he didn't calculate that if you put a silencer on it, the gun doesn't reset itself after every shot, and they had to do it manually. Blah blah blah. I don't know. It looks like just somebody who did a lot of homework and did a little practice. But then there's a photo allegedly of the shooter with his mask down, where he was allegedly flirting with somebody at some hostel. And he had this big smile on his face, and he looked kind of young and handsome, and he looked like a particular movie star that I'm not going to mention. And I thought to myself, I don't know. He just doesn't. He didn't look like an angry person who was out to avenge, maybe a family member who had a bad experience with insurance. He just sort of looked like he was having a good time. There's something wrong about all of it. I don't know what it is. So some are saying it's not the same person, and I think that's possible, that it's not the same person. Well, they look like the same person. Yes, and as the people in the comments have told me, the 22 caliber, we think it was a 22 caliber. Some of them are subsonic, which would give him some problems with the instrument, if that's what the problem was. So I don't know. We'll wait on that. Did you know he was separated from his wife for a long time? So my first impression was her reaction didn't sound like a spouse, like it wasn't enough anguish or something. But they've been separated for a while, so maybe they weren't on ideal terms. That doesn't make her a suspect, obviously, but it would explain why she was a little less emotional than you would expect if they were living in the same house for the last several years. Anyway, there's a new poll by JL Partners that says that Biden will be the worst president in modern history. Yeah, I guess there were only 9 presidents that were ranked, but he was ranked last. Now, can I take a victory lap? I'm pretty sure I've been saying he will be the worst president in history. Now, I'm not the only one, right? So you can all take a victory lap too. But I've been saying this for a while. I mean, I think probably a year in, I was saying he'll be noted as the worst president we've ever had. Here we are. So, good prediction. According to some kind of new study, the government, only 6% of federal workers show up in person on a full-time basis, according to a Senate report. 6% of federal workers work in the office. The rest work at home. Now, I think they have requirements that they might come in once a month or something in some cases, but basically work at home. And Elon Musk corrected it. where they thought only 6% came to work. So Elon Musk decided that wasn't accurate enough. So he posts this: if you exclude security guards and maintenance personnel, the number is closer to 1%. 1%. I think we have a lot of extra buildings. It feels like. Well, according to Rasmussen poll, 55% of U.S. voters think that Trump has a mandate because he won convincingly. And of course, that means that most Republicans say he has a mandate. And interestingly, 32%, yes, something like 35% of Democrats agree that he has a mandate. That's a lot, actually. Now, here's what I think. I'm trying to put together the clues. So Trump likes dancing to YMCA, which some have said is like a gay anthem. And no, I think the YMCA people, they say it's not a gay anthem. But to the rest of the world, it looks like a gay anthem. And then now we find out that Trump has a mandate. Let's see. He has a gay theme music, and he has a mandate. I think Trump's gay. No, I'm just kidding. He's not. All right. There's a report, Sky News is reporting that Elon Musk spent more than $250 million getting Trump elected. It's funny, $250 million sounds like a lot of money, doesn't it? Until you realize that Twitter was $44 billion. So for $44 billion, he basically saved free speech and whatever we have left of a democratic process. For $250 million, he may have pushed Trump over the finish line and gave us a chance of getting rid of some of the worst situations we've ever been in. So I'll tell you, Elon Musk, he spends a lot of money, but he sure spends it in good ways. That's like the best $250 million ever spent. All right. David Sachs has been picked as the White House AI and crypto czar, according to Trump. So here's the first part that's fascinating, that there would be a czar over these two things that you think are unrelated, AI and crypto, but they're not, because it just seems that those two worlds are going to come together in a variety of ways. But I love the fact that that they combined them. It just feels kind of smart, because if somebody's going to be your czar and advising you, probably someone who's smart in both of these domains is a pretty good way to go. So if you've watched the All In Pod, or you've been paying attention to politics, you know that David Sachs is probably one of the smartest observers of American politics, and one of the smartest people in the investment world. And having him on the most critical new technologies, God, it feels good. Have any of you had this feeling with a number of the appointments and a number of things that Trump's doing, that it just feels like something special is happening? Like, everything from Bezos kind of saying, well, let's give this a chance, and Jamie Dimon saying similar things like, hey, let's give this a chance. But David Sachs, I mean, the fact that there are people who have built really successful lives and don't need any of this trouble, are willing to take on the biggest, hardest tasks in the world to save the country. And it's no less than saving the country, by the way, because we're on a doom loop at the moment. And I couldn't be happier that the smartest, most capable, and I think the least nefarious people we've ever seen in public life, because I don't think for a second that somebody like Sachs or Elon Musk is trying to figure out how to make money off of this. I mean, they were really taking on hard, hard jobs. And I could not be more proud to be an American at the moment because this is what America looks like to me. The people who have the most capability, you know, doing their own thing until they're called upon, and then dropping everything and going full on to help the country. So this just feels so right. But there are a few other things. Ro Khanna, you might know him as a Democrat representative who, more often than most Democrats, says things that are common sense. And that's almost why he's famous as a politician, is that he'll sometimes say things that you say, "Oh, well, that's just common sense." Yeah. So he's now publicly said that he's ready to work and help the Doge effort, and Musk thanked him on X. So Ro Khanna, again, common sense guy, says, this could work. How about if I help? This is amazing. This is just not what happens. You're seeing all the smart people go to the same team. And you're seeing that they're treating it not like politics. Have you noticed that? That the political frame for all of this just seems to have dissolved. Because you're taking people who used to be Democrats in many cases and, active Democrats in some cases, but they're working with Trump. This is amazing. I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime of observing America. This is the most optimistic I've ever felt. It's just everything you'd want to be going in the right direction is. Here's another one. Fetterman, Senator Fetterman goes on. Let's see, she was talking to Joy Behar, and said that the Hunter Biden situation was lawfare, and so he approves of the pardon. But then he went on in great detail to say that Trump's felony convictions were obviously lawfare and probably should be pardoned. And poor Behar has to listen to that, and I think she didn't comment on it. But here again, here's a now prominent Democrat who is saying something about the Hunter case and the Trump case that I consider common sense. To me, it's common sense that both of those had a political dimension on it, and so therefore, maybe it should be treated that way. So yeah, Fetterman's just saying this is not political; it's just common sense. You don't want to have lawfare. Yes, thank you. I think even Elon said he's liking Fetterman more every day. I say the same. But only when he's talking common sense, which he likes to do. So I appreciate it. Meanwhile, let's see the opposite of common sense. Let's see Joy Reid on MSNBC. She compared the state of Tennessee, who didn't want to give gender-altering care to minors, compared it to Nazi Germany. So if you don't give minors surgery that will change them for the rest of their life, even if they change their minds when they're older, you're like Nazi Germany. Now, I say this every day, but it's true. The best laugh I have every morning is just watching actual MSNBC coverage with no commentary, just a clip. And I just laugh. I'm like, people actually watch that. That's pretty funny. All right, here's a sketchy one. Apparently, according to the George account on X, a coalition of black churches that represent as many as 28 million black Americans issued a letter to MSNBC demanding that they fire Al Sharpton and investigate the payments, because you know the story. Al Sharpton received $500,000 from Kamala Harris's campaign before he interviewed her and didn't disclose that, which is big no-no. So do you believe that a coalition of black churches on their own decided to send a letter to MSNBC suggesting that a prominent black commentator, Al Sharpton, should be investigated or fired. Do you believe that? Here's what they say. Sharpton does not have a degree in journalism, and it undermines the career of black men and women who have more experience and journalism integrity. Well, does anybody really care that he doesn't have a degree in journalism? Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the media world full of people who didn't have a degree in journalism, doing journalism? I thought it was the most common thing. Bob Woodward, the Watergate guy. Bob Woodward did he have a degree in journalism? I don't know. I don't think so. But anyway, here's what I think. I think this story is too on the nose, doesn't sound organic, and sounds like maybe some people at a black church are receiving some money from somebody who's got a Republican bias. To me, this doesn't sound real. It doesn't sound like it's organic. It's real, but it's not organic. I don't think that they sat around and said, you know what? This Al Sharpton guy is bad for black Americans. We better weigh in on this important issue because we've already, solved all the problems with people's souls and getting to heaven and all that. We got that taken care of. But what we really need to take care of is that MSNBC has somebody who's not experienced as a journalist. Really? Do you believe that that's an organic thing that they just came up with? No. I would place a large bet that that's not organic. All right. So Jordan Neely's father is going to sue Daniel Penny no matter what happens in the criminal trial. Wow. That's right. Jordan Neely's father. So the guy who died when Daniel Penny was restraining him, or he died after the restraint, actually. So that Daniel Penny, even if he gets off, and I guess it's the third day or so of deliberation, so it sounds like a hung jury to me, even if he gets off on the legal part, he will still be sued and probably lose because the standard for that is different. You just have to get a majority. And probably in New York, it's probably not hard to just get a majority who just thinks he shouldn't have done it. It's better I just don't comment on this one, isn't it? Let me do this. I'm going to send you my opinion through ESP. Sending it. I believe you're picking it up. Yes, I'm getting a confirmation. Yes, you have all accurately identified my opinion. Good. I guess we can move on. Well, you heard that story that Mexico seized like a ton of fentanyl, the biggest haul ever. And so people are saying, oh, it's the Trump effect. So now Mexico is going to get tough on the cartels. So what's missing with the story? What's missing with this story? So Mexico seized a ton of fentanyl, and it's enough to kill 1 billion people or whatever. What's missing with the story? Let's see how well I've trained you, because this is something I talk about all the time. There's something wrong with the news story. They found a ton of fentanyl. What's missing? What percentage is that? How many times have I had to say this story is leaving out the important part? Different stories. Sometimes they leave out the percentage. Sometimes they leave out the raw number. Anytime somebody leaves out either the percentage or the raw number, it's propaganda. So I don't know, is a ton of fentanyl a lot? It's a lot if you look at the raw number, which is the only thing they gave us. But was that 90% of all the fentanyl coming into America? Because that would be impressive. Was it 1% of all that's coming into America? Because that would be nothing. Is it a lot, but it's so easy to make it that by the end of the day, they'd already reproduced that amount of supply and sent it out? If you don't know those, you don't even know if this is anything. You actually can't even tell if this is good news or just sort of news. You don't know. This probably made no difference at all in the supply after 2 weeks, because they could probably just cram I'll bet they could reproduce this in 2 weeks. Probably no difference at all. But it could be a political response to Trump. So it might actually be because of Trump, but I wouldn't be confused that anything has happened with fentanyl. There will be no difference in fentanyl deaths because of this. All right, Obama is speaking at some event, and correct me if I'm wrong, but has Obama become the person who just makes everything worse? I think Obama came to believe his own publicity, which is to say that since he would be considered a successful president, especially by Democrats, 2 terms, got overwhelmingly reelected. So historically, if you were a historian, you'd say very successful. But do you think that he believes he was successful because he was smart? Or does he not know that maybe it was his charisma and there was just something about his personality and the time in history where people said, "Yeah, I want a black president." I said that. I remember, when he first ran, I thought, I'm anti-DEI like crazy. You couldn't be more anti-DEI than I am. But at the same time, I live in the real world. And if we could get past that, can a black man be president? And the answer is yes. That just feels healthy, because then we don't have to prove it again, because we can say, oh, okay. It's just a good symbol for everybody, and it's a good sign for everything. So I was in favor of it. But I don't think that Obama realizes that maybe he never had any good ideas. It was always about him. Because now when he talks, he's doubling down on this identity stuff. So I saw a clip where he's talking about all of his identities. He goes, we all have multiple identities. I'm 63-year-old African-American man, husband, father, Christian, writer. As others pointed out, he didn't mention that he's half white. That was not part of his identity, but it's his identity, so he gets to be whatever he identifies that as, I guess. But doesn't that sound to you like he doesn't understand anything that's happening in politics at the moment? Like, why would he even be talking about all of his identities? That was what lost everything. The identity messaging is what made the entire Democrat Party completely destroyed. Because once Trump created a alternative, which was common sense, when you compare common sense to identity politics, those are not close. And of course, the public picked common sense over identity this time. So I really think he maybe is fooled by thinking that he was a brilliant president. He's a smart guy, but I don't think any of his presidential success was because of his brilliance. I think it was him as a personality. He was a special personality. He's very good at it. So certainly as a politician, he's one of the best. All right. David Hogg, who you know as an anti-gun activist, he's one of the survivors of the Parkland shooting, right? He is apparently noodling with the idea of trying to run the Democrat Party. So he might want to run the DNC, because he thinks he can fix the problem of what he thinks is the party's main problem of talking down to voters. Now, first of all, has he accurately identified the problem with the Democrats? Do they talk down to their voters? Well, yes. Yes, they do. Yep. Yeah, it's a bunch of elites talking to each other. So yes, David Hogg has correctly identified that they have became an irrelevant party talking to themselves, basically. Um, and he said this is what Hogg said, quote, "I think the main one overall, the main problem with the Democrats is that we would rather live in a comfortable delusion than an uncomfortable reality." Wow. Is he escaping from the Matrix? I feel like he's got one foot out. Because if he realizes that the Democrats are living in a comfortable illusion and that the Republicans are maybe in more of an uncomfortable reality, what does uncomfortable reality sound like to you? Common sense, right? They're not the same. But if you allow yourself to live in the uncomfortable reality, then you can apply your common sense to the reality and get a better result. If you're living in a comfortable delusion, your common sense won't help you at all because there's nothing to apply it to because you're living in an illusion. To me, this is like kind of a seriously important insight coming from somebody who was right in the middle of the Democrat world. I'm very optimistic about that. Now, he, of course, is pro-Democrat and would like to help them be competitive, but I feel like he's just one layer away from agreeing that Doge is a good idea and that maybe we should be in fewer wars, like almost Republican. Now, he's never going to be okay with the gun part of being a Republican, and that's fine. I don't mind that the country has different views as long as they have some kind of common sense and there's a philosophical, good let's say good intention behind it. So he has good intentions. Clearly a smart, organized guy. Went to Harvard, I think. Smart guy. But I love hearing this. He says the party needs to open its eyes and take its fingers out of its ears, basically. Yeah, that is actually exactly correct. So I think you're seeing the smartest people in the Democrat Party, the Fettermans, the Ro Khannas, and maybe David Hogg. He might surprise you. He's never going to be a Republican, but wouldn't it be good to have Democrats who, if they got elected, could apply some common sense? Here's a story that might tell you something about the future. Did you know that there are 11 media outlets that are local, I guess they're local newspapers, that are owned by one entity that doesn't even try to be news? They're just a Democrat activist organization. So it's not just fake news. It's actually their business model. They're not even trying to be real news. Their purpose, I believe it's stated, is to influence politics through local news. And apparently a lot of their funding is coming from the Soros organization, $15 million in 2023, which is way up from prior years. And here's how this scheme works. So, as you know, you're probably thinking, but Scott, nobody reads local newspapers. How in the world does that make any difference at all? Here's what they do. The local news publications would advertise their own publication, which is legal, of course. And of course, they would show an example of some of their work. So they would buy Facebook ads and then show an example of one of their article, and this would be an advertisement for their platform. Except that they would only show, anti-Trump, pro-Democrat examples. So when you thought you were looking at an advertisement for just local news, you were being brainwashed by looking at some negative story about a Republican. So this is pretty clever. They take a sort of an unwatched, useless media entity, the local news. I don't even know anybody who reads a local newspaper. Do you know anybody who's ever read a local newspaper in the last year? I think we have one. Dilber used to be in the local newspaper, but I haven't even seen one or held it in my hand in 10 years. So Yeah, that's a pretty clever trick to use the fake advertisement as really just a political brainwashing. Meanwhile, over in Syria, uh, Joel Pollack is reporting for Breitbart that the IDF um, is sort of staying out of the fight in Syria. So you might know that there are some rebels that are trying to take over the government of Syria, and the rebels seem to include some extremists. So the rebels include people America likes, but also people that want to destroy America. And Israel, the same situation. Some of the people trying to destroy the Syrian government, which Israel doesn't love, are also people that Israel doesn't love. So there's so many bad guys over there that they're not taking sides. So that seems smart. But here's what's interesting. Apparently, the rebels are being unusually successful, and it looks like it's because Iran and Russia may be stretched a little too far with what they're doing elsewhere. So it may be that Syria, being sort of a client of Iran and Russia, is now unprotected, and it's the very best time in the world to back some military to take them over, if that's what you wanted to do. But I think there's a bigger play here. I think that this is all related to Ukraine and Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran. And I feel like what it's doing is creating another variable for negotiation. So I've told you that I think what Trump's going to do, Trump administration is, I think he's going to go for a base clearing home run. Typically, politicians will say, "What do you think we can negotiate?" And they'll think, "Well, probably the best we can do is a temporary ceasefire that won't hold." Okay, well, if that's the best we can do, let's go do that. And then they get a temporary ceasefire that doesn't hold. I think Trump is so much smarter than that he will throw into the negotiations just a whole bunch of different things. So everybody will first of all get confused because it'll become complicated. And when people get confused, they look for the person who's the most certain. In any kind of confusing situation, whoever speaks with the most certainty just absorbs all the attention because you want the certainty. So if Trump creates this massive negotiating playing field in which we're talking about what do you do about Gaza? What do you do about Hezbollah? How about Lebanon? What's our situation with Ukraine? What are we doing with Crimea? Well, what about a warm weather port? Oh. What if Trump says, here's the deal. We want a big peace. We want to settle all of our shit with Russia. We want to settle all of our shit with Iran. And we don't want these proxies to ever bother us again. So we'll make a big deal if you give us a lot, but it'll be good for everybody. I think this is doable. And I don't think I would have ever said this before. It's only because all the right people are in place. Again, the same situation as the Abraham Accords. You don't get the Abraham Accords unless the leaders who happen to be there at the same time are all deal makers. And that's happening again. It's all deal makers. It's the best deal makers in the entire region. Putin's a deal maker, right? Iran is always a deal maker. I mean, you have different problems with trusting them, of course, but Iranians are deal makers. And, obviously Netanyahu, obviously Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, they're all deal makers. So this is the time. This is the time to get the big one, the one that gets rid of the risk of nuclear war, the one that settles borders. Maybe it gets funding for the people who have been displaced. I think the big one's coming. And it might be so big that it's just breathtaking. And it might be so big that it just changed how you even frame the whole situation. So I've said a million times that Russia should be a natural ally of the United States. The argument against that, them being a natural ally, is that the United States is a predatory country, and we can't have any competition. So wherever we can, we conquer and control and try to dominate every country that could be a problem to us, which is clearly what we're trying to do with Ukraine and with Russia. So could you make a deal where Putin would say, you know what? I'd actually be better off with that deal. I'm good with that. Or is the United States unable to make peace because that's not what we do? I mean, the last time we made a deal with Russia, weren't we the ones who broke the deal with Ukraine? Because I'm pretty sure that we promised that Ukraine would not be eligible for NATO, and then I believe it was the United States who went back on that. So I think the obstacle to peace is probably that the United States only wants fake pieces so that they can conquer everybody they can conquer and control every market they can control, and especially control energy. Controlling energy is the number one thing you have to control. So, is it possible that Trump could make a deal that the entire military-industrial complex would say, you know what? That actually works for us. Probably a minimum you'd have to do is show that the people who make weapons can make as much money with or without a peace. And I think that you could do that because Trump and Reagan both did a smart thing. They both said, we're going to build up our peacetime military. Because if you're the one selling the weapons, a war is a good way to make money. But if somebody says, I'm going to massively build up your peacetime military, then maybe you say, oh, well, I guess we don't need a war. So I do suspect that we create a lot of wars. And maybe if we can find a way that everybody makes money without the war, just by being prepared in case there is one, I don't know. Maybe you could sell that. Maybe you could. We'll see. So I'm super optimistic that common sense is broken out everywhere. I heard Bill Maher on some clips recently who repeats common sense as the thing that that Democrats need to stop arguing against, basically. So he said, stop arguing against common sense. You know, you could still be Democrats, but don't argue against common sense. And that's coming from a lifelong Democrat. So I believe common sense is breaking out everywhere. I think Doge is going to be the biggest, greatest thing ever. Boy, is it going to get messy, though. Whoa. And I'd love to see what's going to happen with Social Security and, you know, the things that are seemingly impossible to cut. I think we'll probably figure out how. Boots on the ground. What's that about? History is fake. Yeah, history is mostly fake. Yeah, we have not played well with Putin. That's true. All right. Oh, taking out Iran's nuclear facilities from the air. Yeah. So, you know, the thing we don't know is if you see that Russia is using North Korean soldiers and you see that they're not helping Syria, how close are they to really, really needing a deal? It might be closer than we think. But, you know, Russia could probably last forever because Putin's in control. All right. That's all I got for today. I'm going to talk to the locals people privately. You all know that you should buy your Dilbert calendar today. Go to dilbert.com. It's the only place you can get the link to buy it. It does not exist on Amazon or any place else. The only place you can get it is made in America, the Dilbert 2025 calendar. Get it now, and you'll get it in time for Christmas. All right, locals, I'm going to talk to you privately. Thanks for joining X and Rumble and YouTube. Talk to you tomorrow. Locals coming at you.